You're talking to these people who are veterans of the industry, and they're all saying, what the hell are you thinking? Like, no one gets into this industry. It's going to cost you millions and millions of dollars to kind of get rocking and rolling and to build a brand. And we're like, that's ridiculous.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I'm with Jonathan Marcus, president of Rose Sisters Brands. Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Ari. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jonathan. It's Made in America podcast. So we're starting off with the same two questions, sir. What do you make and why do you make it?
Well, we manufacture seasoned-baked flour tortillas.
Seasoned baked flour tortillas.
That the unique part of it, aside from the amazing taste, is that you break them in the bag to create your own chips. The original family recipe was created by my grandmother. And my mom and my aunt perfected the recipe. And what we have today is exactly what I grew up with and that we're selling out there in the marketplace.
And why did you guys decide to turn a family recipe into a product?
Yeah, that's excellent question. And, our family background has nothing to do with food other than being consumers. My own career was in credit card marketing partnerships. And at a point in my career, I had kind of gotten bored of what I was doing. And all my life growing up with this wonderful product, people always said, you really need to sell this. And we appreciated hearing that. We politely dismissed it because everybody's nice when it's free. And but after a kind of long career, needing to do something different, my wife and I, we brought these to a party again. Someone said those magic words, and this time it just resonated. And we called my mom and said, what do you think? And she's like, well, maybe now's the time. And that was just about 5 years ago.
Wow.
And we were off to the races.
Off to the races. Well, listen, we'll kind of get through all that, and we got a lot of really good stuff to talk about. I mean, certainly, I think it's always interesting, sort of the startup history, and we'll absolutely go through that. And as a lot of food manufacturers in particular do, you guys went through what I would sort of say is a typical, like, sort of co-packing to self-manufacturing route. And I know that you kind of got some success in that area, and now looking to take it to the next level. So I think a little interest in that journey, and then talking about kind of your move now to sort of going from self-manufacturing to sort of more automation and the technology that goes with that. So I want to go through kind of all of that. But I want to start really with your individual background. You mentioned that you were in credit cards and then credit cards to manufacturing. So like
a little crazy.
Yeah. Give us like, what kind of inspired you to say, I want to do something different, and that something different is my own business in a totally different industry than I've ever worked in before?
Exactly. Well, and I think that was the motivation, is that it was something completely different. I just needed something to learn, right? Something new that would be challenging, ideally fun, and, a success to build. And, my career in the credit card world was great, right? Had a lot of fun, saw the world on somebody else's wallet, and that's always a beautiful way to do it.
Yes.
But there's a point that I came to that is just the challenge wasn't there, the interest wasn't there. And, again, having eaten these things all my life and given them out as gifts, like that sticks with you for 40 something years, that people saying you really should sell this. And I don't know, it was like the perfect timing at this party that those words came out. And we said, okay, maybe this is the thing to do. And to test it, we basically whipped up a batch of them and brought them to a little market around the corner from us in Fairfield and asked the owners if they could just put them out. Could you just put these out for your customers, because we're toying with the idea of wanting to sell this? And they're sure, yeah, no problem. And they put them out, and we didn't really expect to hear back from them, at least not anytime soon. And 7 o'clock on the nose the next morning, they called saying, we're ready to buy.
The next morning?
Next morning. And we're like, what are you talking about? He says, people devoured these things. They're looking all over the shelves for them to buy. And you tell us when you're ready, and we're your first customer. And we're like, oh, yikes. And we really didn't know what to do. And I I think the first thing we did is my wife kind of set us up at a college course, on food manufacturing 101. And we went to the course and we realized, oh my God, like we don't know any of this.
Wait, there's literally a course that you could take?
Yeah,
no kidding.
Yeah.
Where was it at?
It was in New Jersey at Rutgers.
No kidding.
Yeah, and it was great. It was like a great one-day course, kind of throw you into the pool about what the industry's all about.
It's almost like a scared straight, it sounds like.
And it worked like a charm, right? Because there's no way we're doing this on our own. And then we learned the idea of the co-packer. And so we started scouring the area for a co-packer that had the capability to manufacture what we do. And we found one in New Jersey. And I mean, it was a schlep to get to them, and it was kind of a pain in the ass, but helped us. It helped us get off the ground, get going, understand
sort
how
of like a
this
stage
process.
2 proof of concept, right? Like, well, first of all, I mean, I just think it's really cool that, one of the things that so many people may be listening, and I know I've talked to a million people, ideas are cheap and people have them all the time, but the key is to take the idea to action. And the real critical thing for action is just take one step.
Right.
And get something going forward, because someone could just sit down and start planning the whole thing. Oh, I got to buy this and da, 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 da. And you guys just said, let's just put something at a market and see what happens. I mean, was that just like, I just such a great idea. Did you know the market owners? Like, how did you get to that first step?
Do we know them? I mean, we knew them from the sense that we
shopped
there.
Sure.
Right. And he thanked us for giving him money every day. So, and he's just nice guy. Right. And I mean, what better way are you going to get a concept than asking consumers kind of in an unsolicited sort of way, what do you think?
Listen, no, it's awesome. And I hope people listening kind of connect with this idea of like, everything isn't as hard as you think it is. And sometimes you just got to go, and the stuff you see every day, what a great opportunity. And by the way, it could have gone the other way, right? No one eats it. The guy never calls. Right. And you're like, well, I guess not a good idea.
Exactly.
But now you got a free market test to see what's going on. Boom, you got some encouragement.
Exactly. And one of the things that actually came out of that course, they also offered, I think, some sort of advisory consulting type. Yeah. And what they wanted to do for us is conduct these like market research, focus groups and things like that. They wanted something like $15,000 to do it. And I'm like, what are you, high? There's no way we're doing that. I mean, it's not like had loads of money.
Right.
And so it's all self-funded. So it's like, why would we do that? Yeah,
right. We can go to the corner market
and
they'll for free is going to put out chips on the table and see what happens.
And you get the same result, essentially. Sure, it's a smaller, sampling, but whatever. And it worked out great. And after that point, we were in a couple different markets and then got a distributor. And, before you know it, you're in a couple hundred markets kind of overnight.
So I want to get to some of the details on that experience, but I want to just take one step back. So where did the family sort of even come up with making this? Like, I just, preparation, obviously you guys were really gracious and sent over some samples, and I'm sure I did some reading. And like, one of the questions I just kept asking myself is like, I don't know, I've got a lot of family, they make a lot of stuff, but we never made our own chips.
Right. So my grandmother, the seasoning that you tasted on the original recipe is what my grandmother created. And she used to bake it on Polish bread. So Polish bread is like a really dense rye type of bread, kind of the thing that sits in your stomach for a week. And so when she came to America and had my mom and my aunt, like, she continued obviously to cook that. But when they were old enough to bake, they basically just said, listen, it's too much work to make the bread, but we love this taste.
We love the flavor.
Exactly. So we want to preserve the flavor. And at that time in New York, kind of Mexican cuisine was up and coming. So they took the seasoning paste, spread it onto a flour tortilla, baked it, and then that's what we have. And that's kind of where it migrated over to. Yeah.
What an American melting pot story.
Yeah. So
when you guys were giving it away to gifts as friends, did you give it away broken up, or did you get people the opportunity to break it themselves, or how were you?
No. So our family tradition is at the beginning of every meal, we have a plate full of full tortillas that we pass around the table. Everybody breaks off a piece. So kind of the traditional breaking bread before a meal starts. So we would give them as gifts in full form, and they would break them up, and some would just take them out whole and munch away. And so, it was fun to see how people would do it differently.
Right.
It was another good market research that we never really intended, but ended up being great learning.
Yeah, sure. Plus also it kind of makes it like a little bit of an activity, right?
It is. Yeah.
Like more of a share, like to your point about breaking bread, more of a shared activity as opposed to like your traditional sort of like bag of chips or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. It's experiential. Like we want people to be part of it, and we don't want to be like everything else that's out there. So in form and look, appearance, taste, it's just everything about it is unique. We specifically want it that way.
So how was your sort of co-packing journey? So for anyone that's listening that doesn't know, probably most people do, but co-packer is someone that essentially takes your recipe and makes it for you, so you don't have to buy all the equipment or whatever. They also make a bunch of stuff for other people as well. And of course, can be a mixed blessing, right? On the one hand, you don't have to invest in all the equipment, and hopefully they've got some expertise there. On the other hand, you're not the only thing that they're making, so sometimes they don't maybe prioritize you as much as you might like. So how did you find the relationship? Obviously got you off the ground, but how did that work out for you?
Yeah. So I think, again, not coming from the industry, certainly we didn't know anything better, right? So, and then our manufacturing process is pretty unique in the sense of how we prepare everything. So in fact, we had to supply some of the equipment.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, which is fine, because we would take it with us anyway. But most co-packers wouldn't have the equipment that we need.
That's good. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it was one thing I was going to ask you. It's sort of a unique
is.
product, which means they're probably not set up for it.
They're not. No, they're not. So, but this particular group had space, and they're not huge. So, like, we weren't really fighting for time or space, to get production underway, which is great. And like I said, we learned fast about how production works, and how the flow and bagging and palletizing, and sort of God, I didn't even know what a pallet jack was, and trying to figure stuff out. So, like from
not a lot of use for pallet jacks in the credit card industry.
Not so much.
Yeah,
not so much. You would think.
Yeah,
and yet not so much.
Not so much. Yeah.
And so we learned, and it was great. On the negative side, they're not passionate, right? They're volume players, right? Whatever it is that they're making, they want to pump out a lot of it. And
with probably as little variation as possible.
You bet. Right. And whether it looks great or doesn't look great, they didn't care. They just wanted to fill the bags, fill the cases, and, bill you. And it was pretty expensive, like just labor and storage and, production units and all that stuff. You add it up, and, your COGS are through the roof. But our biggest issue was the quality, right? And no one's going to have the passion that the family does. And we knew it, and we saw it. And not too far into that relationship, we kind of knew we weren't going to kind of stay here for too long. We just needed to get to that next level where it made sense, that we could justify getting away from a co-pack relationship and self-manufacturing, and get that knowledge, behind us before we kind of screwed up too badly. So, and
sort of the idea being, if you're getting this thing off the ground, give yourself the time and space to really focus on building the brand, getting enough market share and customers so that you have enough sort of throughput to be able to focus on building. Because it's going to be hard as it's like a bootstrap startup to be able to focus on sales and marketing and the branding and developing the relationships and worried about making it at the same time.
Exactly. I mean, and we're a thin staff, right? I mean, it's basically my wife and myself, and we have a great team of folks on the floor, and that's it, right? Like, we don't have a dedicated salesperson. We don't have dedicated marketing. We don't have dedicated HR. So we're all, basically doing everything ourselves. So the idea of learning everything and then running everything, and then the idea of setting up your own shop, it was crazy. Like, it's crazy. And then, okay, now all of this is happening, right, a year before the pandemic hits, so no one knows about that.
Right.
And then as you're kind of getting into the industry, you're talking to these people who are veterans of the industry, and they're all saying, what the hell are you thinking? Like, no one gets into this industry. It's going to cost you millions and millions of dollars to kind of get rocking and rolling and to build a brand. And we're like, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. We can do better than that. And sure enough, it does. It takes millions and millions of dollars. And we've had countless holy shit moments that, what are we doing? But despite all of that, and despite the pandemic, like whatever, we kept growing and we kept getting new markets and we kept getting additional distributors and then online. And then we're doing, QVC, and then we did a Good Morning America online promotion, and all of it, like all these things are happening that don't usually happen for early stage kind of companies. And, my wife and I were talking, it's like, how is this happening? Like despite the obstacles. And we got to this point where, okay, now's the time to get out of co-packing and let's set up our own shop.
And so how did you sort of make that move, right? So, I mean, for one thing, you mentioned that you guys live in Connecticut, the co-packers in New Jersey. So like, were you spending a lot of time down there to see what was going on with your equipment and learn sort of the process, or how did you sort of make that pivot?
Yeah. So certainly early on, one, you have to teach them how to make this stuff. And then you kind of have to have some surprise visits to make sure that they're doing it properly. Right. And, schlepping an hour and a half each way gets tiresome, pretty fast. And that was a pretty big motivator, like not wanting to do that anymore.
Right. 3-hour round trip stuff.
It's a long day.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the main thrust behind.
So now you've got a whole new thing to learn, right? Because now I got to figure out how do I find space? How do I lease space or buy a building? Like right now you're all on that learning curve.
Yep. So that's exactly. So we started looking at buildings. It's like, how much is space, and surely we're not going to be able to find space that's, food grade ready. So we have to build all of that out and what's involved in that. And then, dealing with the building departments and fire and, FDA and Connecticut, Department of Health. And it's like all this stuff again, now we're learning. And then of course there's the money, right? It's not cheap to build out a space. Now, mind you, you have to understand that when we were in a co-packer, we literally had 200 square feet, right? So we have all of our equipment, we have all of our product and material and ingredients crammed into 200 square feet. Now,
it's like smaller than a normal hotel room.
You bet. Oh, you bet. No, you're definitely close quarters.
Yeah.
And it was hot, like it was not a comfortable world.
No.
And we said, like, obviously we're not replicating that. We need expansion space. So as you look around, you're looking at space that makes sense. And then you have to price out, like, do you really need 3,000 square feet? Can you get away with 1,500 or do you need more? So we kept looking around and we finally landed at a place that, was certainly a lot cheaper than the co-packer, was in a great area in Bridgeport. And, we had to build it out, and we built it out.
So you didn't find a place that was food grade ready?
Absolutely not. No, it was like a train wreck, but great size and great bones. And, we basically blasted the place and rebuilt it from the ground up and got the FDA in there and got Connecticut Health in there, and they blessed it. And, we invested in our first piece of equipment at that time, which is a tunnel oven, kind of high velocity, right? Not that we needed it then, but we knew we were going to need it at some point and some point soon. And we just happened to find like a great deal on it and whatever. So we pulled that beast into the place and then built the process around it. And it's wickedly manual. Which is actually kind of comical because when you come into the plant, you see this big oven in the middle and everything surrounding it is super inefficient.
Really?
Oh, completely. I mean, it's just like the oven is designed to go fast, However, humans can't keep up with it, right? So you've got like this beast that's dying to be fed, and it's just crawling, like a crawling pace.
You've got a high velocity machine operating
It's like it
at
basically
slow velocity.
Exactly. It's like I explained to everybody, it's designed to be like a Ferrari. Ferraris are designed to go fast, and they hate being stuck in first gear, right? They're like unhappy creatures that way. So the oven's the same way. So it's stuck in first gear, low power, slow belt, and it's just dying to like be taken out of gear.
That's right.
So,
give me some gas.
Yeah, but we have it. And it works for now. We've made ourselves way more efficient, even with that inefficiency over what we were doing at the co-packer. So by like a factor of 4. So we're pumping out 4 times more volume than the co-packer was able to at lower costs. So the next stage is where we need to get to.
It's just a great example of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the much, much better.
Exactly.
Because, I was just saying, right, you're talking about a Ferrari in first gear and it all sounds man, that sounds tough. Poor Jonathan, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, but by the way, we're doing 4 times more volume. So 400% more throughput at a cheaper cost. So let's say it's 50% cheaper at 400 times, at 4 times more. That's like an 800% improvement.
Exactly.
So,
it's absolutely.
let's not, apparently a Ferrari in first gear is about as good as it sounds. Pretty darn good,
Exactly.
Right.
So, and we talk to, emerging companies at different phases, and we tell them, like, listen, even if we had 10 million bucks in the bank, there's no way we would kind of just drop it all into full automation, right? We are very much a phase-in approach. It works great because each phase that you take has different kinks in it that you just never really thought of until you're living it and experiencing it. And it's an awesome way to build up, little stages at a time, and saves on the money too.
Well, I mean, when you're bootstrapping, right? I mean, that's a great way to. Listen, I've been there myself. Every little incremental step, you got to take the step. You got to reap the harvest. Use some of the harvest to plant more seed, and then reap more harvest. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's the way to do it. How do you think about continuing to grow the market share? Because one of the challenges that emerging products have, especially in the consumer packaged goods space, or what they colloquially call CPG, is just breaking in through the noise, right? Because I mean, there's like shelf space you got to deal with. There's so much money behind Tostitos, Doritos, whatever, blah blah blah. And how does like the Rose Sisters brand sort of break through the noise?
Yeah. So listen, I'd be lying if I said we're way out on top in terms of brand recognition and things like that. So we have no false expectations of, being on a shelf with those guys.
Right.
And the reality is we're
not knocking down Cool Ranch Doritos.
Right. Exactly. So we are not looking to be in center store. We set ourselves apart by being in deli.
Oh, okay. I don't know what center store is.
So on the shelves with all the chips.
Oh, like in Stop and Shop in the chip aisle. That's not your spot.
At all. Like we don't want to be there. We shouldn't be there. We're always like in the deli area. So you see a bag like this in the deli area, kind of with dips and cheeses and things like that. It stands out, and then people are like, "Oh, that looks interesting. Let me grab one. Let me give it a try." So that helps us kind of set it apart. The other way is just kind of through different kind of media channels, right? And just starting to drop the name, whether they're influencers. We had a couple great airings on QVC. So you're seeing like a couple million people looking at your brand for 7 minutes. That's great free advertising. And it did wonders for us. And then you've got, we do a lot with the online B2B portals, wholesale portals. So one is called Mabel, one is called Fair. And this basically kind of usurps like traditional distributors, where these are kind of wholesale marketplaces where retailers will go, put orders in, the orders come to us, we ship out direct. So,
but how do they know to find you?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I'll tell you, we don't know.
But they do.
They do. Yeah, they absolutely do. We're a top 10 selling brand on one of those portals. And,
Wow.
they have teams that go out to talk to the retailers to get them on board that portal. And then, they market us as a top selling brand. And I guess that catches some eyeballs.
Sure.
And like if we come across a kind of a small independent group, we tell them, get on board here. It's free to get on board. And you can order, and we'll ship them out.
Right.
So, before you know it, you've got kind of a couple hundred little independent boutique markets that there's no way we would have gotten into otherwise across the country. And you're like, yeah, we're in California all of a sudden. This is cool.
Right.
And so more and more, and we have our own social media channels. I mean, it's not huge, but we have a following and, we post, a few times a week and people are hearing about it. And in due course, when we raise some money, we'll do some, ads and, sponsorships and things like that just to get more brand awareness. So
the next sort of iterative step approach.
exactly.
Again.
Yeah. I mean, we've not invested a lot into marketing, right? So you mentioned like those Dorito guys on the shelves, they're paying, 5-6 figures for that real estate, right? And we're never going to do that.
Right.
Like one, we don't have it, first of all,
Right.
but two, even if we did, I don't see how that ever makes sense.
Well, sort of that whole product market fit concept, right? I think it was really interesting that you immediately said, look, we're not a center store product. Like that's not our positioning.
Right.
We got to be positioned here. I mean, that's really a critical understanding, right, of how to make your product successful is understanding where it fits
Yeah.
in the universe of similar sort of products, right? Food is all something. How do we find that right spot? I mean, did you just learn about product market fit and understanding how to position your product through experience? Like, how did you?
I mean, I'd like to say you bet,
Yeah.
but let's just say there's some of that and a lot of luck.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of pushback that we got when we were first starting was it doesn't happen this way. This is not the way it works in this space. And those are the worst things to ever tell us. Don't ever say that to us because we don't care. Like we don't care how it's always been done because how it's always been done hasn't always been great.
Right.
And we're good breaking paradigms and, shaking things up. And we're completely comfortable doing that. So like even the package itself, people are like, well, chips don't typically come in a package like that. I'm like, exactly. Right.
Right.
And we love it. And yeah, they don't usually have windows. And I'm like, yeah, right. Well, we're proud of what we're making and we want everybody to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So, they say, well, it's not going to fit on all the shelves. I'm like, that's fine. Yeah. So then it's okay. There are plenty of shelves where it does and has. So, I think it would kind of keep standing out that way. And then like those big markets that, have those slotting fees. And I mean, we'll just, say thanks for the interest, but it's not the time.
Got it.
We're okay.
So if one of those like larger stores reaches out to you, your message is like, hey, not for us at the time.
I mean, if they're demanding that kind of fee, for sure. Say
Right.
that's very, very nice, but not so much. Not now.
Right. Appreciate your interest, but
Right.
you're wrong
Right.
fit.
Here's a bag of chips. Enjoy them.
Right.
And thanks. But, and we're doing great in alternative retailers as well. So not traditional grocery, like world markets, around the country and home goods, stores like that have, hundreds of locations, and to be in those, we stand out.
Yeah.
Great followership there. And
they're probably looking for something that's a
Exactly.
little bit different than what you might get somewhere else because they've got to stand out too.
exactly. Right. Exactly. And so those are things in military commissaries, we're
Really?
Yeah. So it's like, those are cool places to be that are not traditional channels. And we love it.
Sure.
We absolutely love those programs. So
How do you, as you guys get bigger and bigger, one of the things I found interesting from your early on story was you were really close to the customer. Well, at first the quote unquote customer was free and they were friends and family getting them, well, friends, I guess more,
Yeah.
getting them as gifts. And then you were putting them out at like, your proof of concept at this neighborhood market that you go to, getting great feedback. Well, now as you're in California and commissary markets and, all over the place, you're sort of getting more and more separated from like the customer and customer feedback. How do you think about kind of continuing to stay close to understand, are you reaching the right customer? Are you meeting their needs? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, geography plays a big part in that. So it's not like we can hop out to California for a weekend to do demos.
No.
So that's challenging, right? As the further geographically away they are. More locally, kind of East Coast, we love doing demos, right? So we're always in the face of consumers and, they love giving feedback. The other great thing about being an emerging brand is that consumers love emailing. They love telling you what they love and don't, or suggestions, because they're not interested in talking to the big corporations, right? The Doritos of the world, no one's going to listen to me there. They don't care, right? But someone like Rose Sisters, I'm definitely willing to email them and maybe I'll hear back, and we always answer, right? We always, no matter what. And the feedback's very cool. Like whether it's, oh, this is how I used it. Some people post on their social media, like this is how I'm using it. So we get tagged. People are like, oh, I didn't really like this, which is great. They talk about the packaging, what we could do better. And, new flavors and things like that. So we listen to all of it. So we're pretty close to the customer.
How do you think about separating the signal from the noise? Like everyone's got a million ideas, right? Yeah. And I'm sure if you listened to every email, you'd have 70,000 flavors and you wouldn't be able to make anything.
Right.
How do you sort of sort through that and figure out, what's a good idea versus one you're not going to pursue, and then saying what's one, hey, that's a great idea, but that's a 2028 idea, not a 2023 idea.
Yeah. So, listen, every idea costs money.
Yeah.
All right. So, and we're still kind of operating in pretty thin territory. So like we can't incorporate really many, but we track all of them. So when it comes time to introduce the next flavor, you kind of capture, you see trends of people saying, hey, this flavor profile is really cool. And if you hear that more than once, you think that there's something there, right? Kind of listen, there's some pretty crazy ideas too, right, that are just, okay, you're a unique person and, it's awesome, but we can't do that, So yeah, like the far-fetched ideas, you just chuckle and thank them and, kind of put that in the executive filing bin and
for later,
for never, and the other ones are good, right? They're good and they may not be good for right now,
right?
But listen, we're not intending to just be for right now. We want to be a continuing enterprise. And as we grow and have more capital, we'll incorporate. And it's always good to test, right? It's always good to test it. And you don't, again, going back to the beginning, you don't need to spend 15 grand on focus groups. You can just go out there and just put it in a market and
talk to your customer and see what they got to say
and just hear what they say.
Yeah.
They'll tell you.
Yeah, they will not be
shy.
They will not be shy.
Not shy.
What's something that now you've got a few years under your belt? Like, what's something you kind of got into it and you thought, yeah, I expected that was going to happen and it happened. Like, you got started on this journey. Like, what are some of the items that you were not surprised about that people might be interested to know about from your journey?
From the business perspective? Yeah, it's a pretty hard question. All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that, and the reason is because we're not from the industry. So everything is kind of a surprise.
Is new. Yeah.
And it's all new, right? So I think the biggest thing is just how many markets took us in, whether they're independent or whether the world markets the world, and, to have them trust what we're offering and put into hundreds of stores. Like, that's really cool. Yeah. Like that's a really, really cool thing. And then, going on TV, very cool thing, right?
Did you expect that was going to happen?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. No, there's like, why would, I mean, how many people get to do that? Not many.
Right.
And like, why would it be us?
Right.
And, and so I don't know that it's like, yeah, we planned that happened exactly as we expected. Nothing happens the way you expected. Anything. Like what, I cover the gamut.
What does your family sort of think about it? Does your mom think like, it's sort of a family thing? What does your mom think about all this?
Well, thankfully, I'm still the favorite son. So, I mean, the thing's great. So
You risked the title, Jonathan. You put the title at risk by taking this out there, but now.
No. I with confidence, and my brother knows it.
That's right.
And it's all good, and it's a thing. But I'll tell you what, this business has actually energized the family.
Oh, I bet.
And that was a pleasant surprise. So now it's always a topic of conversation, at the family, like we're everywhere. Like we've got family all over the place, and they're just always asking what's going on with the chips and where are they now and where can we get them and all that stuff. So mom, she owns the majority of the company, and nothing happens without her blessing.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I mean, she's just one of those people you don't go behind her
Matriarch,
back and all that stuff. So, she knows what's going on, and it's cool. Like it's a very, very cool thing. And she's always having us send out samples to people, and whether it was a doctor that she went to go see, it's like, go send a case to the doctor's office, and which is great because she's loving it. And then, she points at the logo and she's like, that's me. I was going to a Downton Abbey party, and, and it's cool. It's a very, very cool family thing.
That is cool. You ever think about what your grandmother would think about what's happened to this recipe?
I have. Yes. And okay, so my grandmother Goldie was a very private person. And on one side, she would be thrilled that so many people are happy tasting her recipe. On the other side, she would be mortified at any attention she was getting. Like she would not be the type to go out and talk to people about it. Like she wouldn't want anybody to know. She was just a very humble woman that way, which is really a charming quality of hers. But for us, we honor her memory and her legacy, and I'm proud to do it.
Absolutely, man. That's just got to be such a rewarding and a great part of the business for you and the family. You've sort of talked about this automation, and I'm just wondering, like, who do you rely on, or who have you been able to partner with sort of in the manufacturing ecosystem, whether it's in Connecticut or nationally, to sort of help learn, not so much on the sort of the industry, the CPG or the food service industry, but you talked earlier about sort of automation, and that's sort of a different animal. Are you finding that people are helpful? Do you have resources that you're using to sort of help learn about all that stuff? So
when we started talking about the need to get to that next phase, we did talk to a lot of people. I think a lot of folks who are ahead of us in the growth and life curve have been nice enough to talk to us about what they did and who they used. What we found when we went to go look for engineers and fabricators, a lot have no interest in talking to companies our size. They basically, I give them credit. They come right out and they say, listen, unless you're spending $1 million with us, you're not worth our time. Which annoying, but I mean, you have to respect it.
Yeah,
so
unfortunately.
So we did a lot of research on our own, maybe haphazardly to try to find suppliers, that kind of manufacture and customize, things of what we need. And we found a couple. And then fortuitously through kind of DECD of Connecticut and CCAD and kind of manufacturing focused entities of the state, we met some great people, right? And who are experts at doing this. And, their services are free. And I mean, it's really quite an education. And then I think when the time comes that we're ready to kind of pull that proverbial trigger to start, we've already designed, I think, what we need, but now to fabricate it, when we get to that stage, I think we'll ask them to make the firm introductions. And listen, I think any business is all about relationships, and the more people you can talk to, the better off you are. You just never know where it's going to lead. Certainly for us, it was critical. Just we didn't have a pool of resources that were CPG, or even manufacturing experts. So, we ended up meeting a lot of people, and some helpful and some not, and that's all good. Just that's how we've kind of gotten.
Listen,
to where
you know
we
what?
are.
You've got to keep on keeping on.
You
right?
do have to keep on
one foot in
keeping
front
on.
of the other, trying new things, and
bet.
you keep experimenting till you find things that work. So what do you kind of see as the next stage? What's your next level goal, or what's your current goal to kind of move the brand and the company to the next level?
Yeah, so we have a few pretty sizable opportunities out there that require some very large volume production, and we've been keeping them at arm's length because it's those things that, like, if you say yes to it, you cannot not deliver, right? Because you'll never hear from them again. And I think that's our next step.
Way to capture those opportunities.
Right. And the only way to do it is to be more automated, right? Yeah. So we can feed that beast of a machine quickly, so it can get out of that first gear that we were talking about. We as a family, we've kind of self-funded our operations for the last 5 years. And listen, we're not wealthy people, and, we've drawn from every source that we've got, and begged, and, had a tin cup at the corner a couple nights, and, you do what you do, but we've kind of done what we can do. And now we're kind of talking to the first real outside family money to invest, in this, so we can invest in the automation.
Right.
So that's kind of where we are kind of in our growth phase. And once that's secured, it takes 6 months to fabricate and test and implement, kind of the new machinery. And then we can go tell those opportunities we're ready to rock and roll. And, that'll take us to a growth of where we are now, probably to like another 4X.
Wow.
Just in top line for the next 12 months. So, which is great, right? And your COGS go down even lower than what we did from when we moved from the co-packer, right? So that's kind of what that scaling and that automation does for us, right? Like, it's like we can keep pumping product through and bringing on new retailers and things like that. But there's a point for us where it just doesn't make sense, to kind of keep growing inefficiently.
Right.
Like, it just, like, why would you
not that
we're doing that.
You kind of got to go to the next level.
You have to
can't, we got to go past sort of incremental.
Exactly.
And just step level up.
Exactly. You got to jump. You have to get to that jumped level to say now we're pumping out a lot.
Yeah.
Our margins are healthy, and now we can, bring on 3,000 more locations, and that's next.
That sounds fantastic,
Yeah,
man.
We're ready.
Dude, let's get it done.
Right.
Jonathan, it has been really, really cool hearing your story.
I appreciate it.
Congratulations on being able to get this thing off the ground and taking like a long time family tradition and turning it into a hell of a business.
Appreciate it, Ari. This is great.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by Compass MSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.